Beer.
It's money. We can't live without money. There may be a few people that can get away to a wilderness somewhere, but just for basic food, shelter, clothing, you purchase it with money. So we better have the money system right. Most people think this is our money system. Federal Reserve System is part of the federal government, right? Banks loan money that's already in existence, either their reserves or deposits. And the federal government creates our money. Most people would think that. I thought that until a few years ago. We want to keep this down to a level where everybody can understand that. This is our monetary system, right? No, none of that is true. But it all should be true. And it's absolutely insulting to the people in this country that the monetary establishment thinks so little of us that they won't tell us how the system works, because it is understandable. This guy here, Jonathan Adair Turner, he's a British guy, doctorate in economics. He was the head of their pensions committee, their 3 or 4 committees, climate change committee, also the, I don't know, the government economic committee or some kind, I can't think of the title of it right now. He gave an address to the Stockholm School of Economics a few years back. So this guy, everybody looks up to in economic circles. Federal Reserve, all our guys in the Federal Reserve, they look up to him. All across the world, he looked up. He's asked to give the keynote address to one of the most prestigious economic schools in the world, and this is what he said, among other things. Modern textbook assumptions are wrong, dramatic and wrong. What does that mean? They're dramatic. The textbooks are wrong. They tend to assume that what banks do is take deposits from household depositors and lend it to borrowers. This is the insight that banks create credit and money and purchasing power. Banks create money. He said it right there. The textbooks are lying to us. They've been lying to us. A lot of our bankers, a lot of our economists don't really even know how the system works. But it's such a convoluted system. We had a discussion here about banks creating money a few years ago at this very conference. And there were a couple of economists here. And it was technically to banks create money, and there was a little bit of a back and forth, and somebody was saying, well, technically they don't create money. And that's true, they don't create money. Stephen Zarlenga he played Alexander in the Gordian knot by just taking a sword and bringing it right down and cutting through the knot. That banks don't create money. They create what we use for money. What we use for money is not real money. It's debt. Where do we go here? The Federal Reserve System, independent government agency, this is all from Federal Reserve websites, different things there. It's an independent government agency, right? That's what they say they are. And their goals are maximum employment, stable prices, and moderate long-term interest rates. We have a 12-member federal open market committee that determines the policy. It's also privately owned by the banks, the independent thing. The 12-member open market committee, it's independent of who? They're all bank presidents or academics entirely committed to continuing the present system. So it's independent of us. It's independent of all the dummies out here across our country, and we're too stupid to be able to understand their system. Creating money is debt. Independent of the people. One of their goals is minimum unemployment. What was it there? How did I word it there? Maximum employment. This is from shadowstats.com. And we just had a discussion about, one of the previous speakers, about the real unemployment rate. It's not the 5% that they're putting out to us, it's not even the 10%, which includes, when you can include everyone who is out of work that wants to work. There are some people that are out of work that don't want to work, they shouldn't be included. Everyone who's out of work who wants to work, and people that are trying to skimp by at a part-time job that doesn't pay them enough to live on. It's easily 22–23%. So the Federal Reserve is failing on one of their basic missions. Inflation calculator, Federal Reserve's been around since 1913. Something purchased for $1 there is going to cost you $24.73 now, and that is a cumulative inflation rate of 2,372%. So they're not working out too good there either. They can't fulfill the mission that's been given them. What have they actually accomplished? I can't remember. What is it? Oh, there we go. War. Because loaning money at interest is very profitable to the banks and those that own them. And they sure like to use it for war, militarism, building of military hardware. Why is there a refugee crisis? There's a refugee crisis because we're at war. I thought we were only at war in 6 countries, but somebody, Rand Paul said 7 countries the other day. Anyway, we're at war all across the Mideast, and that's driving people out of their countries they live in. Poverty, these are results of our Federal Reserve System. Austerity, we've all got to get by on less, except for those at the top. Inequality, money for the wealthy, not anything for the rest of us. Environmental crises, these are real, and it's not just global warming, we're polluting our oceans. Species are dying off. To fix these things, well, we got more things that do. Unemployment, debt, that's the big one, the debt. If we create money as debt, we have to be in debt. There's no money, no society, so we have to be in debt. That's our system here. Look at this thing, linking social justice to monetary reform. I really like that picture. I can't remember where I got it from. Anyway, I wrote a booklet on this. It's in the back there. You can just pick one of them up. And that was kind of the title of my topic the last couple of years ago. And, oh, this is something else that the Federal Reserve is responsible for. Siphoning all that money off and sending it straight up to the top so they can have their yachts. So this is a real basic thing, monetary reform. This is how the debt money system works. The banks create, where'd they go here? Banks create virtually all of what we use for money as debt. They do it out of thin air when they make loans. Just take that as truth. We'll get to where that comes from in a second. So the banks are creating our money. As the loans are repaid, the money's erased from the bank's books and no longer exist. Thus, we and our government and ourselves, we must remain in debt, or there's no money for society to function. The Bank of England came out with this, their quarterly bulletin in 2014, Money Creation in the Modern Economy. This article explains how the majority of money in the modern economy is created by commercial banks making loans. The Bank of England is the oldest central bank in the world. It is what the Federal Reserve was patterned after. I'd say it's the gold standard for central banks. Anyway, the Bank of England is telling us here, we don't have to look at graphs, we don't have to ask an economist from the Federal Reserve to explain the system. He's telling us right here. They're telling us right here that the majority of money in the modern economy is created by banks, commercial banks making loans. That's who creates our money. What's the real money? The Federal Reserve pays the government face value for every coin minted. The Federal Reserve pays our government only the cost of printing our currency, paper money. So we get a quarter for each quarter. And we get 5.5 cents for every dollar bill, 14.3 cents for a $100 bill. But we get 25 cents for every quarter. So when some of the other speakers have said this, and this is true, that the coins are the only money. Pennies in your pocket and your piggy bank, that's the only real money in this country. And of course, the Federal Reserve pays us zero for all money created by banks as loans. And that's the majority of the money. This currency and coins is a small portion, less than 90%. The coins are only 1% or so. Here we're going to describe here, kind of put them side by side. Public money system, which is what we're advocating here, and the debt money system. So the public money system is represented by the NEED Act, the National Emergency Employment Defense Act, put into Congress in 2011 and currently ignored by Congress, but it's still there. Federal Reserve Act of 1913 is the debt money system. The NEED Act money represents the industry and the productivity of the people. Debt money system represents debt of the people and government. We got plenty of it now. Public money system would give us a dramatic reduction of public debt. The debt money system gives us public debt and it must increase. The public money system gives us a dramatic reduction of private debt. In the debt money system, the private debt must increase. Public money system stabilizes the business cycle, and the debt money system gives us recessions and depressions. They will continue. Public money system ends bank runs, and the debt money system, bank bailouts must continue. I wrote all this stuff myself. This stuff here, right after we go to these things, dramatic reduction of public debt, dramatic reduction of private debt, stabilizes business cycle, ends bank runs. I didn't write that. Who wrote that? Right here. Chicago Plan Revisited. These are economists that wrote this. International Monetary Fund. Working paper by Jeremy Bennis and Michael Komhoff. I'm not sure, is Michael Komhoff coming here this year or not? He's been here before. He was the deputy chief in the modeling division for the International Monetary Fund. And it's pretty funny because I've been to Washington a couple times before I met Dr. Komhoff. And I can remember we drove past the International Monetary Fund. I don't look upon this as like a good group. This is, if you're an anti-war protester, you're empire that's taking over the entire world with its economic system. You're not a friend of the International Monetary Fund, and it's kind of funny that they would put out a paper like this. Now this is not, they have a disclaimer on here that it's a working paper. But it's a working paper that has not been refuted. And what they used was, and I can't remember, DSGE computer system. Dynamics, whatever it is. Anyway, whatever it stands for. It's the same computer system used by the Federal Reserve System when they make their predictions and things. So they put this into their computer system and said the Chicago Plan. That's what the NEED Act is patterned after. It's basically the same thing. The NEED Act has been brought it a little bit more up to date. And they used this and they looked and said, okay, if we implemented this Chicago Plan, which we call the NEED Act now basically, we would have much better control of business cycle fluctuations. This is the International Monetary Fund. Complete elimination of bank runs, dramatic reduction of net public debt, dramatic reduction of private debt. Output gains would approach 10% and inflation drops to zero. What's not to like about it?
And taxes on labor would go down.
Very good. Taxes could go down. They wouldn't have to, but they certainly could go down. And that's something I should have put on that last slide there. We come to the lost science of money. Stephen Zarlenga, who was the director of the American Monetary Institute, and he just recently passed away in April, and he's missed by all of us. Stephen researched the money system and wrote The Lost Science of Money. 3,000 years of monetary history. I think he even told me it was 3,500. He concurred with Aristotle that, there's his book there, that money exists by law and not by nature. So that means that money should be a province of the law, a province of the government. And it wasn't silver, gold, or bankers' fiat anyway. He began the American Monetary Institute. He wrote the American Monetary Act and encouraged Kucinich, Dennis Kucinich, to put it into legislative form as the NEED Act, the National Emergency Employment Defense Act. And here's his book. I brought this up from the back. I'm going to show everybody his book on the camera. It's available at the American Monetary Institute website, and that's monetary.org. Anybody who wants to know any more about this, buy the book there and read about it. It's an amazing book. There we are right there, monetary.org, Stephen's book. Okay, NEED Act has 3 necessary reforms. And basically, what's amazing about this, you know, this is for dummies, right? This is monetary reform for dummies. This is exactly what we all think is going on right now. Now, maybe those of us in this room, because we've been studying it for some number of years, but the basic, before any of us got this information, this is what we thought was going on. This is what almost all of our friends and relatives think is going on. It's what many of the economists, the Federal Reserve economists, think is going on, and bank presidents and things. A lot of them think it kind of goes on, maybe a little bit different. But anyway, the Federal Reserve System becomes part of our government. Call it a Federal Reserve, let's make it a Federal Reserve, and let's make it answerable to us. Bank creation of money as debt is decisively stops, and banks will only loan money that already exists. Again, this is just what people think that's intuitive in us. This is the way the system should be. And the federal government creates and spreads debt-free into existence U.S. money as needed to put people to work, to rebuild our infrastructure, to take care of the tremendous challenges presented by climate change, global warming, pollution of the oceans, all sorts of things like that. There's plenty of work that we have to do, and this allows us to do this. Democracy. I was going to get into a whole discussion of democracy and everything. And thankfully, I saved myself from all of that. But anyway, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Lincoln did not use the word democracy in his Gettysburg Address, but I can't think of a statement that encapsulates better what democracy should be. Should be. But the question is, can we have both a democracy and an undemocratic money system? Because money that's created as debt by private entities, by private banks, siphoning the lifeblood from our country, is just not, doesn't work with the democracy. There we go. Here's a paper for you. Now we're talking about dummies, and so I'm going to give you a scholarly paper here. Testing theories of American politics, elites, interest groups, and average citizens. Gillens from Princeton and Page from Northwestern, right outside of Chicago here. Anyway, multivariate analysis. These are policy issues. And this took place over 10 or 15 years recently. That they studied policy issues indicates economic elites, I guess that's it, right? And organized groups representing business interests have substantial impact on U.S. policy. So the rich have influence, substantial influence. Organized groups representing business interests, they have substantial independent impact on U.S. policy. Average citizens, that would be the dummies here, and our mass-based interest groups have little or no independent influence. Now, I can just look at the world after standing on a street corner for 12 years, protesting our wars and finding out about these issues of social justice and austerity policies, unemployment, what's happening to the climate and everything, and saying, well, we're not having a lot of influence on what they're doing in Washington. But this is something that when you get the scholars looking at it and saying, yes, they can prove this too, it's a reflection on our democracy. So what I look upon at monetary reform is, it's something to bring people together. Now, Reverend Coates is going to be here tomorrow, I believe, and talk about bringing people together, supporting the NEED Act is kind of a unifying thing for all the things wrong with us. And I would say yes, it is. It's a unifying thing for progressives, liberals, whatever you want to call yourself. Because look, what did I do there? Get a slideshow. Click to, I don't want to exit. I want to go back. Oh, there we go. Good. Okay. So these are some of the things that progressives want. They want jobs and infrastructure, and the NEED Act gives it to them. Transition to clean, sustainable energy could be paid for very easily with the NEED Act. National health care could be paid for with the NEED Act. Funding education, forgiving student debt, all of those things could be funded with the NEED Act. But you know what? We take care of the other side of the equation too here. Conservatives, they want a sound fiscal policy. This would be a sound fiscal policy. Our money would be actually money. Pay off the federal debt. There is no way that the federal debt can be repaid with the present monetary system. The federal debt is bigger than the monetary system. And when you repay debt, the money is extinguished. So the federal debt is $20 trillion, and the M2 level of money is somewhere around 15 trillion, I think, right now. So there's not enough money to pay it off. And if we paid it off and then or if we came within 5 trillion of paying it off, we wouldn't have a single penny left other than those pennies in our pockets. And end government deficits. Right now, they just punted the ball down the road for, 3 months or something or other, as far as getting an agreement on the deficit in Washington. Do I have anything else? No, that's it. That's it. So we're all done here. Thank you very much. If there are questions now.
Somebody mic'd up.
Cut off the question.